Hi, I'm Shannon Thompson, and my presentation is called The Thrifty Clarinetist. As clarinet professor at Western Carolina University with a limited studio budget, I'm sensitive to the financial constraints of students and other clarinetists who need workable equipment. As the clarinet swab maker at my company Lannigan Limited, I've delved deeply into the design of instrument swabs and other equipment, and I'm happy to share what I've learned with other do-it-yourselfers. In this presentation, I will demonstrate how to make a useful clarinet swab with little or no sewing skills. I will show you how to assemble an easy-to-adjust clarinet neck strap and the best ways to connect a neck strap to your instrument. And I will share some of my favorite tips and equipment that don't eat into your budget. A swab needs to absorb moisture well and fit through the instrument. Here are some typical fabrics you will find in commercial swabs. Cotton is absorbent, but it is rarely used in swabs these days because it tends to wear out quickly and it tends to leave lint. Think of the old classic white buffet swabs. I managed to tear a hole in one of them the first time I pulled the swab through my new clarinet. There are a lot of synthetic fabrics out there, and most of them have little to no absorbency. This swab-like item is made of polyester pretending to be silk, and it's not going to pull moisture out of your clarinet very well at all. Silk is very absorbent and quite strong. One type of silk that I like to use in my swabs is the traditional charmeuse fabric, which is shiny on one side and relatively thin compared to most fabrics. I use a serger to make a strong hem so the fabric won't unravel. Another excellent silk for swabs is Dupioni silk, which has more of a texture to it. It is a lot thicker than charmeuse, and the texture gives it a little bit of a scrubbing feature when it goes through the clarinet bore. It's also less expensive than charmeuse. Microfiber is extremely tightly woven and does not unravel like other woven fabrics, and it is also great at absorbing water. Thicker microfiber tends to pick up dirt easily, as you see on this bass clarinet swab. It does tend to shed microplastics into the water when you wash it, and that's a definite drawback. But it is a very effective and economical fabric choice for an instrument swab. Here are some supplies I'm going to use to make a swab, including several pieces of microfiber that could be used. Many of these are cleaning cloths used for electronics and eyeglasses. Because all of these cloths are thicker than the charmeuse silk used for traditional swabs, you don't need as much material for these swabs. A relatively small eyeglass cloth can serve as a decent swab fabric for a clarinet and may even need to be trimmed to fit comfortably into the upper joint of a clarinet. We won't be adding a weight to our do-it-yourself swab. Basically, this is because it's difficult to do and not necessary. Weights are excellent for getting the swab through the instrument quickly, but they are tricky to attach to the cord without good sewing skills. You see here that some of the weights are enclosed in the fabric of the cord, some of the weights are encased in plastic or some other coating. What you don't want is direct exposure to the weight, not only because it can scratch the bore of the instrument, but also because most weights are made of lead and you do not want to be in direct contact with lead. This one on the end is actually too large to fit into an A clarinet, which has a longer register tube. I use tungsten weights on all the swabs I make and sell. They are harder to find and more expensive, but they are worth it to not risk exposure to lead. I am using 550 standard size paracord. It has some bulk that will help maintain shape as it goes through the bore of the clarinet. Thick cord is less likely to get knots than thin cord. Do not let your cord get knots in it. That's a recipe for getting it stuck on the clarinet. I'm using a lighter to seal the ends of the paracord so they don't unravel, and I've got a good pair of scissors to easily cut through the paracord as well. I'm using upholstery thread and a large needle, actually a larger upholstery needle than is shown here. As an alternative to sewing, I'm using permanent fabric glue. I have some string here to tie around the cloth to pull it through the upper joint to see if it fits before putting the swab together, but really it's just a lot easier to make the swab first and then test it and cut it to size if needed. Here are two swabs I'm about to make. The first one will be with the permanent glue. You need to use enough glue to secure the paracord well to the cloth and to close the cloth around the paracord narrowly so that it will fit around the tube inside the upper bore of the clarinet. Okay, so after I glue it, I put something heavy on it and let it sit overnight to dry. Actually, it was a couple of weeks in this case, but overnight should do fine. You can also sew the cloth to the paracord. I'm using upholstery thread that I've doubled up on an upholstery needle so I can make sure that the thread is strong enough to hold all of this together. I'm making a quadruple knot, and then I pull enough stitches through both sides of the microfiber and the paracord until I feel confident that it will hold. This hand sewing is a little tedious, but it is worth it in the end. I finish it with a triple knot, and then I cut all the loose threads and tuck them into the inside of the swab. Next, I seal both ends of the microfiber with a flame and neaten up the ends with pliers. Next, I test the swab to see how well it goes through the upper bore of the clarinet. Since this is a really pretty large microfiber cloth, you can tell that it's way too big to fit in the bore and it needs to be trimmed a lot. I would not recommend using such small scissors like this for trimming the microfiber since I'm getting pretty ragged edges, but they were the closest scissors and I just went with them. Still too big. The wider the cloth, the more trouble it's going to be getting through the bore, so I trim the width. I test it again, and it goes through perfectly. Here's the glued clarinet swab, and it looks good. And it works just as well as the one that I sewed. It's up to you how long you want your cord to be. I like it to be able to go through the whole clarinet. I also left a cord at the bottom of the swab in case the swab gets stuck and you need to pull it out the other way. That may be a lot of cord to store with your clarinet, so you might want to shorten the cord in either direction. The great thing about this microfiber is that you don't have to hem the edges necessarily, since it is so tightly woven it doesn't unravel near as much as traditional fabrics. The edges may get a little fuzzy, but the swab will not disintegrate like regular fabrics. Using pinking shears will also help fabric to resist fraying, but it's super important to always hem any fabric that is woven more loosely than microfiber, which is pretty much every other fabric. Here's a piece of silk, and you see how easily it unravels. In contrast to the microfiber seems completely indestructible. I use a neck strap when standing, and it is a great teaching tool for helping students to develop a better approach to holding the clarinet, finger position, and moving their fingers efficiently. You can find relatively inexpensive saxophone neck straps that work okay for clarinets with a little adjustment. I always need a shorter neck strap than the typical one for alto saxophone, so if I repurpose an alto sax neck strap, I have to put a knot or two in the neck strap in order to make it short enough for my body. In my opinion, all clarinets should come with a loop on the thumb rest to be able to attach a neck strap. How hard is that? It's not hard. There are some very inexpensive adjustable thumb rests with loops on the market today. They are easy to find and cost under $15. Here's one that I bought several years ago that works fine on a professional clarinet. Clarinet neck straps generally come with some kind of leather or synthetic tab with holes in it. Most are pretty hard to use, uncomfortable, and pretty much worthless. I've been using Michelle Gingras's neck strap loop trick from her Clarinet Secrets book forever with my students, and it works great. A student may break one of these occasionally, but they generally last a long time. I go to my local hardware store and find a 1/4 inch outside diameter nylon spacer for a 10-inch screw. These are generally in a drawer in the carpentry section. Then I go to the plumbing section and look for a package of number 14 rubber O-rings. This is how you put it together. At first, you think there's no way that you can get this O-ring into this spacer, but you keep twisting and applying pressure. And finally, it works. Then you can put this around the thumb rest. It will also work with a newer, fatter thumb rest too. You just have to be patient. You can add an S-clip if the hook on your neck strap is too fat to fit through the rubber ring. Here's how to make a simple neck strap that works on any size instrument. For the materials, you'll need 1-inch thick webbing, a metal snap hook, and a metal snap adjuster. There are plenty of places where you can get straps, strap hardware, and webbing in various sizes and forms. You can even repurpose straps from bags and outdoor equipment. I got these supplies from strapworks.com. Here I am assembling a simple neck strap. The hook goes on first, and then I thread one end through the front of the strap adjuster. I put the other end through the back of the strap adjuster, And then I fold the end over and attach it to the other side. I'm doing this here with a binder clip. So now it's basically assembled. I'd recommend stitching through the webbing to secure the webbing to the strap adjuster rather than using the binder clip, but I did opt for the instant neck strap option using a couple of binder clips. I leave the strap fairly long so I can use the same strap for any size instrument, my E-flat clarinet and bass clarinet. The binder clips hold the bass clarinet fine, particularly if I'm just using it as an extra method to hold the bass clarinet in place along with a peg, but I wouldn't trust just the binder clips long term with a heavy instrument without sewing the webbing together. Much better, in my opinion, than a neck strap for a bass clarinet is a bass clarinet standing peg. You can make your own instrument peg out of carbon fiber. The standard diameter for instrument pegs is 7 millimeters. You can find multiple vendors selling carbon fiber rods on eBay. I ordered 4 carbon fiber rods in 2019 that were 7 millimeters diameter by 1 meter and paid a total of $36 for them. That includes shipping. I've used them for various bass clarinets. I cut them to size with a mini cut-off saw, and it's nice to protect the floors by attaching a wine cork that has a hole for the rod drilled into it. Here's a cheap and effective way to clean your mouthpieces. You can purchase a large container of citric acid crystals for $12. It's easy to store and it cleans your coffee maker too. Here's my bass clarinet mouthpiece. It's got the usual white calcium deposits on it that I would like to remove. The pad actually looks pretty good, but I'm going to have to remove it if I want to clean my mouthpiece. So I'm peeling the mouthpiece pad off and I'm making sure to rub off all of the glue. I put about a half teaspoon or so of citric acid crystals into the lukewarm water. I would normally use a spoon to mix it before I place the mouthpiece in, but this time I didn't have a spoon, so I stirred it carefully with my mouthpiece. Then I let it sit in the solution for about 15 minutes. When I take it out of the solution, I am careful to scrape off the calcium deposits that come off easily now. And I also take a Q-tip to the inside to make sure that the crevices are clean. If it's particularly dirty, I might let it soak for a few more minutes, but this is nice and clean, so I rinse it and dry it carefully and then put on a new mouthpiece patch. It looks brand new. Here are a couple of my favorite items you might not know about. First of all, silicone mouthpiece caps. I love these because they work with any ligature. If I can, I prefer buying ones that aren't black because it's easier to remember that there is a cap on your mouthpiece when you pick it up to play, when it's in a contrasting color to your mouthpiece. A lot of vendors sell these now. There are different sizes, so check the measurements before buying. La Tromba cork and slide grease in 100 grams. This cork grease is fantastic, and this size has become much more widely available lately, and it's really economical compared to the small jars. I keep this in my studio at WCU. Thanks for watching.